Hello and welcome to my short video explaining soil moisture. Some of you will recognise this plant. This plant has had a history. It used to be on my desk pre-COVID, and I left it in my classroom during the first lockdown, and by the end of lockdown in about June I went to see it. I thought it was dead, it had wilted, but actually it was still alive and I've nursed it back to health. Anyway, the soil is pretty dry, and if you sort of look in here, you'll be able to see the soil is pretty, it's very, very sort of light and dry. So I'm going to pour some water in now, see what happens. So I'm pouring some water in. It's soaking into the soil, that's infiltration. But obviously the moisture's only got into some parts of it. So I'm going to put some more in now, see what happens. Well, those of you who have watered plants know what's going to happen. No water's coming at the bottom yet, it's just still soaking in. So all the pores, all the gaps are starting to fill up with water, especially around the top where I've been putting the water in here. So that means that the water is surrounding the soil grains and that is present as capillary water. There was definitely some soil moisture in this already, even though it looked pretty dry, because we can see that the plant is very happy. It's got plenty of water, so somehow, even though the surface looks dry, there must be quite a lot of soil moisture inside because it's so green and it's so verdant. Lovely word that, by the way, verdant. So if I keep on adding some more water, there's quite a lot of storage capacity in this water. Nothing dripping out yet, so we're still heading towards field capacity. I haven't reached it yet. Let's just turn it around a bit. Any dripping yet? No, still dry, so I'm still adding more storage. Still adding more storage. Now I started off with about 600 millilitres of water. So that shows you how much air actually is in this soil. Here he is. No drips yet. Let's see if I can fill the entire... I don't think I can do this. I don't think the whole thing will fill up. I don't think I can actually fit this whole water into that soil. But you never know. That's actually quite a nice experiment. Now I don't want to overload it because I want that moisture to go right down into fill all the pores up. If you look carefully, you can see the water soaking in there. Let's put a bit more water in there. See it soaking in, infiltrating, it's entering into the soil just like precipitation goes into the soil. Oh, I've got some drips. That means that gravitational water is dripping down. So I have reached field capacity. So field capacity is reached when water starts dripping down. Now, I think I may have had a surge of water, so it hasn't fully reached it yet. Let's put a bit more in. Oh, look at this now, it's getting down a bit, up down to about 250 mil so far of water. I'm approaching field capacity. The whole pot is now, oh, there's a few more drips there. The whole pot is feeling very full now. It's feeling very heavy. All that water is actually really quite, it's making this pot quite heavy now. Let's put some more in, this will drip out now. Yeah. There we are, we've now got some gravitational water coming out. So we've reached fill capacity now, definitely we've reached fill capacity. Let's see what happens now. If I pour all this in, let's see what happens. I'm now pouring all the rest in now. So I've gone for it completely. Let's see how much comes out. Let's see how much comes out. So, just going to pause it for a minute. Doesn't look like much is happening at the minute, but if you look carefully, I've got a lake now in this pot. And it's not really going anywhere, so I don't know what I've done, but we'll come back in a minute. Well, the water is very slowly emptying out now, and I've actually stuck this in the pot to see what happens. And if you look carefully, you can see water dripping into it. It's slowly filling up, so I'm going to be interested to find out how much water drips out of it, how much gravitational water comes out. It's really dripping down now. All this is water that was unable to be stored in the soil pores. Now, interestingly, there's a few bubbles there. Can you see there? There's a few bubbles, and the water is now fully infiltrated now. That lake, would you believe it, has all gone now, and it's now pretty empty as all the water has entered into the soil pores, and it's now travelling down through the soil, and it's still dripping down into the water underneath. Okay, there's very little changing now. There's a couple of drips now, probably about 10 minutes into it now, and that means that I've only managed to extract about 130 mil. That's the only excess water I had. Everything else has been stored in the soil, and so that means that there's lots of water held there. And remember, there's the water is now stored as capillary water, and it's surrounding the pores and it's sitting there. There will be some air in the pores. There are some gaps, but we've reached fill capacity. For a moment, we obviously reached saturation. And we know saturation was reached when the water, as soon as the water started to drip down, we crossed over fill capacity and then we entered into a saturation phase. And now the water stopped dripping, we've gone back to fill capacity now. If I put more water in now, it becomes saturated straight away because there's no more pore space there's no more space for capillary water. Any extra water I put in will fill the pores up and that will form as gravitational water and will just drip out again. Okay, so just pause it now. Right, so that is literally all the water that's left there. There's hardly any water left there. And if I lift this up here, it's not dripping really much at all because it's all now stored as capillary water in the pore space. There is air in there, but if I drip that into there now, let's see what happens now. I'm just going to empty this back in now, and that will all come out. All 110 mil of water should drip out again. Let's have a look at what happens. Speak to you soon. Now, if you're just about to see what's happening here, there is, interestingly, as the water's going down, some of the air is now being forced out. We've got some air bubbles popping up here, just from the pores. The pores the water going down is forcing the air out. And down here, if I look down here, it's dripping down here again. So this is currently saturation. We've crossed over fill capacity and we're now gone into saturation. All the pore spaces are full of water, but that excess water is then dripping down into the bowl underneath. There's lots of bubbles here as all that air is being forced out. So we've gone past fill capacity and we've gone to saturation. Okay, the water's just disappeared down again, and you can just about hear some crackling. And what's happening now is the air is being sucked back into the soil as the water travels down through the soil and back down to the bottom again. Interestingly, I've got a little bit less water in the pot now. I think what's happened is there's a few pores that hadn't been filled the first time. There's a bit of extra capacity in the soil for a bit more capillary water. So I think I've really given it good soaking now. I think all the pores that could be filled with capillary water are now full. And the water at the bottom is a little bit less than what it was last time. So that means that the entire pot is full of capillary water now. And if I look up, there's very little dripping out now. This pot now feels quite heavy because all those pores are full of water. Remember that something like about 45% of soil is air that could be filled with water. So it was quite light and now it's quite heavy because there's so much water in there. There was some water originally in there, but there wasn't much. But there clearly was enough capillary water for the plant to extract it and grow. Anyway, there's my little demonstration for you. So at the end we have, what's that? Just over 100 ml left, and definitely less than what we started with because it's all gone into the soil.